Reimagining Success, Episode 36. You're listening to Reimagining Success, the podcast where we help you reimagine your future, designing a life and career beyond the 9 to 5 that allows you the freedom, flexibility and fulfillment that you've been dreaming of. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg. Now, let's get started on those dreams. Hello and welcome back. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've looked at the fears that can get in the way of you leaving your corporate job, even though you want to, or at least you think you want to. So we've looked at the fear of failure, as well as last week, the fear of starting from scratch, starting, all over again after getting really experienced and knowledgeable in your particular career that you've chosen to date. The fear that the grass won't actually be greener, so you'll make all this massive upheaval in your life and work, and then you'll find that it isn't as good as you thought it was on the other side. And the fear that you'll have to work harder than ever before. So you leave the corporate so-called 9 to 5, which of course never is the 9 to 5, in order to have more time for your family, for your hobbies, to travel and so on, and yet you end up, or you might end up, working even harder. Now, I hope you're beginning to see that it doesn't have to be as scary as you think. So if you haven't listened to those last couple of podcast episodes, then do please listen, because I have tried to break down what's behind those fears and also how to begin to address them. But even so, even if you do begin to realise that it doesn't have to be so scary, you might be wondering why bother at all? Why make all that effort to throw your professional and personal life into turmoil? You're challenging your very identity, and then doing something as scary as leaving everything that you know instead of just staying in that very comfortable comfort zone. So I want you to think back to your childhood, first of all. As a baby, and in your really early years, everything that you do, you see, hear is new. You're learning literally every minute of every day. You're falling, you're failing, but then you get right back up again and try again. And you're really growing massively and incredibly rapidly, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, no child, no little toddler that's learning to walk is going to stumble and then say, oh, well, this is too hard. I'll just keep crawling the rest of my life, or I'll just stay sitting here on the same spot and stay within my comfortable area of movement here. They're going to keep pushing. They're going to fall. They're going to hurt themselves. They're going to cry. But then inevitably, they will learn to take their first steps and, of course, then be able to walk, run, and so on. But as you grow up and get older, something happens, unfortunately, and you start to get comfortable. You avoid doing those things that are unfamiliar and you stick with things that you do know. So you stop learning, essentially, and you settle into a routine and you start to live on autopilot. Now, little you was endlessly curious, always asking questions. It's that stereotype of children always wanting to know why, how, what if. And yes, it's annoying for the parents, but it is how children learn. It's incredibly important. As you go through school, though, you're somehow taught to look for the right answers, to stay within the lines, and to follow an expected path. And that's how you get onto that kind of conveyor belt that I've often talked about. So you begin to learn, or most of us, unless you're rebellious, I certainly wasn't too rebellious at school, you begin to learn that you have to do as you're told. You get the good grades, you get the gold star, the tick, the good points, whatever it is. You go to a good university, maybe another good university as I did, go to a master's, and then you get a good job. And you might even have a good time while doing it. But without really realising it, you are gradually settling into that comfort zone. Now, okay, it all sounds pretty comfortable though. So why is that a problem? What's wrong with staying in your comfort zone? Well, look, there are plenty of benefits that come with living within your comfort zone. First of all, it is comfortable, of course. Now, you feel really safe, secure, you're confident, you're in control. Stress and anxiety are minimal, or at least they're familiar beasts, because you've already mastered the problems that exist in this world, you know what's coming next, and you have rules and habits in place to deal with everything. Now, this may not sound exactly like you. Maybe you're actually having a bit of a tough time in your so-called comfort zone, but somehow still better the devil you know than the devil you don't, right? So even though you're stressed at work, even though you're not earning as much money as you wanted, even though you're not happy in your job, let's say, you sort of subconsciously are preferring to stay in that not very comfortable zone, rather than go for the unknown, which could be even worse, perhaps, so it's just very uncomfortable again. So there is another side to this comfort if you're feeling that comfort in the comfort zone. How many times can we say comfort in this podcast episode? So there's a side where you experience stagnation, frustration, and a feeling of being stuck as your comfort zone inevitably starts to shrink around you, so it gets smaller. And I don't know about you, but I certainly did this in the past. And you begin to offload that responsibility onto other people. So you might blame your parents for bringing you up in a certain way. I'm not a risk taker. My parents wanted me to go to a good school. They told me not to study English or go into acting because that wouldn't earn enough money and so on. And they sort of forced me into the career I'm now in. Your teachers, of course, the education system for conditioning you to follow that particular path. I always talk about the good girl syndrome and again, how I was sort of conditioned to expect or desire those gold stars and good girls from my teachers. So teachers, education system, and then of course now as an adult, house prices, mortgages, living costs and so on in this very expensive city that we're living in. Now, anyone and everyone but you becomes responsible for why you are where you are today. And that's incredibly disempowering because you're relinquishing the power to do anything to change your situation. Now, in my case, I moved to Geneva for a 2-year master's degree in international development, and I ended up, as I call it, accepting a 2-year assignment in a private corporation. Then I stayed for another 2-year assignment and another 2 years, and whoops, suddenly, 6 years have gone, in fact, 9 years in Geneva, and because I was first there studying and then working. And, I did well at work. I got promoted and I had an incredibly interesting role towards the end, heading up an entire sort of digital department. I was doing a lot of incredibly interesting things, working with Google and agencies and Facebook and very senior people within the company, which was fantastic. And however, all that time I would basically say to most people, to myself and to anyone who would listen, that this marketing job was just temporary because I had studied politics, economics, development. I wanted to work at the United Nations. I wanted to work in a non-governmental organisation, an NGO, but then I'd do nothing to actually move into that career that I had so allegedly been so set on. So now and then, yes, I would half-heartedly apply to some job. I wouldn't really hear back and I wouldn't do anything about it. But of course, but if I'd really wanted to get into that career, I could have done a lot more. And I know other people who have tried harder and have succeeded. I also told people I wanted to be a writer. I've always said that since I was younger. I wanted to write, but I never actually wrote anything. Now and then I would do a writing course, but then between the courses, I wouldn't do anything. I also told people I wanted to travel to South America. Adventure is out there if you know the Pixar film Up. If you haven't seen it, I'd definitely recommend you watching it and bring a box of tissues for the first 5 minutes. It's absolutely beautiful, but very sad. So I said I wanted to travel to South America, but never booked the ticket to actually go. So at a personal level, I had really lovely friends that I'd, developed over those years. And I didn't make much of an effort to make new friends, to be honest. We go to our favourite bars, clubs, restaurants. And then a lot of those friends married, moved to the suburbs, had 2 children, or they left Switzerland, they left Geneva entirely to go back home because there are a lot of expats in Switzerland. And meanwhile, also personally, I was single, albeit happily so. And I wasn't really doing anything about that either. So I was really stuck. Even though sort of consciously I felt pretty happy, subconsciously, obviously, there was a big disconnect with where I thought I should be or where I wanted to be. So, okay, why do you stay in that comfort zone? Why was I stuck? Why was I staying there? Well, although it feels real, the strange thing is that the comfort zone is just an artificial construct. It's a mental concept that has no physical manifestation, nothing tangible really in the real world. It's a boundary that you've created that really exists only in your mind. So, as we said the last few weeks, we're afraid of failure. You're afraid of making mistakes, of looking foolish in front of other people. You worry about what those other people might think or say. You think you're not good enough, maybe, or you think that you're so good that you have to stay in this prestigious job and keep progressing the company because, the company needs you and the whole company, the business would collapse if you didn't stay there. You might otherwise be overwhelmed by all the options, unsure of where to get started. You may simply be lazy and not ready to put in the work. On the other hand, ironically, rather than being afraid of failure, we may actually be the very possibility of success that you're afraid of, because this is an incredibly empowering thought that you have the power, the possibility to change your life. And there's a lot of accountability and ownership that comes with this. And you might be avoiding that responsibility, obviously subconsciously, but procrastinating, self-sabotaging effectively, putting off action until tomorrow, the next day, and so on, telling yourself and others, as I did, yes, but first I need to, I'll do it when, and so on. Okay, so what does happen when you step outside that comfort zone? Well, they say that outside your comfort zone is where the magic happens. It's where everything you've ever wanted resides. Now, when you push the boundaries of what you feel is comfortable, When you challenge yourself to try new things, when you go on an adventure, when you explore and experiment, and yes, let's face it, take a bit of a risk because it's never risk-free, that's when you learn and you grow and ultimately you achieve your deepest, darkest desires, those things that you've really been dreaming about for a long time and haven't dared to do anything about. Those things that you wish you could do, that you dream about, that you maybe even talk about to people you trust, but oh, I'm not the entrepreneurial type. Oh, I could never travel on my own. Oh, no, I need the security of a full-time job. Maybe when I'm older, when I've saved more money, when I've had kids, when my kids are older, and so on. Those impossible dreams we're talking about here, the so-called impossible ones that you fantasize about, but you actually don't do anything about. Now, getting out of your comfort zone and actually taking action is where those dreams can become goals. And then goals you can translate into an action plan, and that can actually become your reality. Focusing on growth rather than comfort is empowering. This is actually my coaching model that I developed during my training and certification as a coach a number of years ago, the growth versus comfort model. It really gives you a more positive outlook because even the worst situations offer opportunities to grow. So even if, something goes wrong, it's a failure in a way, you can look at that as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to move on and get to another level, take sort of one step back to take a massive leap forward. It really gets you focused on the present, because every new situation is a fresh opportunity and your past doesn't have to determine your future. And it involves taking responsibility for your own experience. So again, you don't blame other people. You're responsible for creating the life that you want with every opportunity that you grasp. Okay, so if I've convinced you don't want to stay in that comfort zone, maybe it's not even that comfortable in the first place, you're ready to step outside, how on earth do you start stepping outside your comfort zone? Well, look, you're probably waiting for the right moment to arrive, and I'm afraid it never will, or for motivation to flood your veins, and I'm afraid it probably won't. And in that case, you're still putting the responsibility for changing your life on someone else's shoulders. You're relying on Father Time or Lady Luck to bring you that sort of decision, force you into the decision almost, because sometimes you are forced into that decision. Work-wise, you might be made redundant, in fact, which is almost a relief for some people because it means the decision has been made for you, but it's also very disempowering. The truth is that motivation doesn't come before action. Actually, you've got that backwards because action creates motivation. I always share the example of, cleaning, for example. I'm not a massive fan of cleaning and tidying up, and I'll be lying on my couch looking at everything that's a bit messy, and I'll think, I don't really want to do anything, and I'm waiting to feel motivated to tidy. However, if I were to get up, which I sometimes do, and tidy a little bit, I'll just do 5 minutes picking up. Actually, just that action of getting up, beginning to tidy and clean makes me motivated because I realise, this isn't so hard, and I get a little bit excited, maybe a bit geeky about, sorting things away. It feels better. It's not as bad as I thought it was. So actually taking action is what creates the motivation. So don't sit around on your bum waiting for that motivation to hit you. When you act, you are, by definition, getting yourself unstuck. You're building your own confidence in your ability to do something, and you're creating momentum and setting off a really positive, reinforcing chain of events that will lead to all sorts of things that you could never have foreseen. Now, your action doesn't have to be, and probably shouldn't be, a huge, massive leap. I always talk about the one step, because pushing yourself too far may mean that you overshoot the growth zone. So you get out of your comfort zone, you go too far past the growth zone, you go flying into the panic zone that lies in the wilderness outside. Too much risk, too soon, and that's going to have you feeling out of control, and you won't be able to reap all those benefits that you're looking for. And, moving forward doesn't have to mean that you're losing all those things that have given you comfort, that you love and that you value. You can bring all that with you while you let go of the other things that no longer serve you. Because with each step outside your comfort zone, as you realise that you not only survive, but you actually thrive out there, you're reassured. And the next step will be easier as your comfort zone expands along with your actions, and it gets easier and easier as you grow that comfort zone, actually. So you're not even just stepping out of it, you're actually making the zone in which you're comfortable even bigger. Because after all, if you think about it, everything that is now within your comfort zone was once an impossible dream as well. Remember that little baby who couldn't even crawl, let alone walk? Look at you now. Look at you running and jumping and swimming and whatever else you can do. So over to you. How are you going to take that one step? What one step will you take to move out of that comfort zone and towards your goal of escaping the 9-to-5 for good? What are you going to do to take ownership of your own choices and get yourself definitively unstuck? Remember, even a teeny tiny step can be enough to give you a new perspective, to get you meeting new people, to building your confidence so that you can do something a little bit bigger next time. And if I can suggest a small step for you, it'd be to come and join us over in the One Step Outside Facebook group. That's a great community full of like-minded people, also working on reimagining success and stepping outside their comfort zone. Oh, and me, as you know, I quit my job. I did travel to South America. I started my own business. I wrote a book. I fell in love. So I've done all those things, or I don't want to say all those things, but many of the things that for many years I was just kind of dreaming about, fantasizing about, that were impossible dreams. What's next, I wonder? Who knows, as I have to keep challenging myself and not let this become my comfort zone now. So it's not about pushing endlessly. Obviously, I want to enjoy and celebrate how far I've come now and enjoy what I've created. But of course, now and then it's time to keep expanding that comfort zone so it doesn't once again shrink around you as well. So I hope you found that a little bit inspirational, again, perhaps a bit provocative, but I'd encourage you to have a think about where the lines, where the boundaries of your comfort zone lie, and how you can take that one step today, tomorrow, and the next day, and keep taking those steps. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. If you're looking for support and encouragement as you begin to reimagine success in your life, then come on over and join us in the One Step Outside Facebook group. You'll find like-minded people who will cheer you on, as well as free training sessions and lots more. To join, visit onestepoutside.com/community or just search for One Step Outside on Facebook. I'll see you over there.